the show today, Karen and Joe Sutton-Johal. So these guys are the founder of a system called Penny Drops, and they discovered the 4 money mindsets. This is something we're going to talk about. So on the show, we mostly have embodiment teachers, but I want a kind of personal mission really to help embodiment teachers get their shit together around money and business. Most of us are horrible at it. I was, and have sort of at least become mediocre now. And I realized there's just a huge amount that we as a community can learn. That's why we've had people like, George Cow and Ted Hargraves from Marketing for Hippies on. It's also, they're more like the external side of things, marketing and different ethical marketing techniques. But I've realized there's an internal side of things too. And these guys have come highly recommended to me. We've had a chat once, and I like what I've heard, so we've got them on the show. So guys, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Nice to hear a little bit about your story. So sort of in brief, how did you become interested? Normally I say in the body, but I'm going to say in money for you guys.
I'll tell you, it is an interesting thing. All my life for me, I've been completely obsessed with what makes some people have loads of money and what makes a whole load of the rest of us have very, very little. And I think a lot of that came from my background, Mark. My dad came from one of the richest families in Ireland.
Oh.
And I'm not talking like a Mac mansion and a few nice cars. I'm talking my cousin is regularly in the rich list. Properly rich family. And my mum came from an absolutely dirt poor family in County Limerick.
Wow.
Her father was a wood turner and she married my dad for money, essentially. And what was fascinating as I was growing up, I saw that there was such a difference in how the rich bunch and the poor bunch handled money.
Yeah.
And financial catastrophe befell both with all sorts of regularity. And the rich guys always came out on top. They just seemed they know what to do. They took risks, they nearly lost their houses, they did all kinds of things happened. And they always came out, they bounced back. They absolutely knew what to do. The poor side of the family had money come in, bits of inheritances, bits of windfalls, all sorts of things happened. And they always ended up dirt poor.
Uh-huh.
And I started to see then when I was about 7 or 8, my dad's business collapsed. And we had to leave our home. And I think, to be honest, I was really traumatized from that.
Uh-huh.
But I started to see how somebody from one background weathered it and somebody else would just go to pieces. Mm-hmm. And it just drove me all my life to understand it. It drove my career. I'm a trainer by trade. But my obsession was like, what makes people really good at something and what makes people really shit at something? And my master's degree is in competencies and capability frameworks. So I would go into like the International Stock Exchange, or I did an awful lot of work with legal services in the legal profession. That what are the capabilities and competencies that make somebody a really top lawyer, an average lawyer, or a really, really bottom performing? And we've applied that to money. What makes somebody way above averagely financially successful? What makes them averagely financially successful and below? And Joe, your background is very similar. There was a lot of similarities, isn't there?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, my parents came to this country 60 years ago and settled in one of the poorest wards in the country in Derby. And they actually started a small little business. So from scratch, the ground up, without any qualifications or money, or to be honest with you, many resources, they actually started a business. So I was born into a business family. I've only ever worked in and had earned my income from growing businesses. And what happened in 2004, Karen and I got together already, and we decided, right, we're going to start from scratch. So we started from scratch with where we were, because I've had 2 older children in Derby, and started from scratch building businesses again. That's nothing to do with a family business, but just from ground zero. And we built a total of 3 businesses and became financially free in 2012. And this is the business. This is the training business that we're speaking about.
Does that mean, sorry, financially free? What do you mean by that?
Financially free is an interesting thing for us, because we're not flashy people or, drive around in massive cars or anything. But if we stopped working this minute, we can still pay the school fees we can still live in our nice house and we can still have a very nice life.
You're not dependent upon future earnings to
in any way. In any way, our assets would see us out nicely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So what made you start the sort of money mindset stuff? I mean, was there a particular moment you said, you need to do it financially? What made you go, okay, we want to actually work on this to help other people?
Do you know, and again, we didn't actually set out to discover the 4 money mindsets. What happened was back in 2008, after the financial crash, I had said to Joe, look, because we were getting a little bit of money through in the businesses by then, and I had a little bit of space to pursue some other interests. I said, right, I want to become a debt advisor. And this was driven unconsciously by my own trauma from what happened when I was a kid and my dad's business collapsed. And I had some sort of misguided idea that I could go out there and help people, particularly other kids, not suffer what I had as a kid. And I went off, did my training, and I was working in Derby in 2008, 2009 as a debt counsellor. I'd go to people's houses, get all the stuff together, get all the shit together and find out, right, this is how much debt you're in. We contact the people you owe money to, we negotiate, we sort you out, and everything is fine. And I must be a bit slow in a way, because what I was noticing was that they were in debt and the rest of their family would be in debt. And then they'd ask me to help their cousins and their nephews, and the whole lot of them were in debt. And then I think the kind of crux of it came was, I was called to this house in Derby, in Littleover, and there was an old man and an old lady. And they were crying when I got to the house, because very often people who are in debt, the people they owe money to, come to the house and do things and intimidate them. So the pair of them were crying in the house, and I went in, and I was absolutely delighted with myself when I'd sorted out. A well-known bank had actually lent them 12 grand and was hassling them and all sorts of things. Anyway, sorted that out. And 6 months later, the guy phoned me up and he said, look, I'm back in debt again.
Right.
And I nearly, you should have heard the swearing. Luckily, I didn't swear like that down the phone at him, but I was effing and blinding like only a mad Cork woman can around the house. And then it dawned on me that this is my baggage. This was how this guy did his money. This, you know, he didn't actually understand how to do his money anymore.
Yeah. So you'd sort of put a sticking plaster on top of it, but the actual, let me kind of.
I made it worse, I think. Yeah.
That makes sense. And you do see these kind of patterns. People listen to this, they might say, hey, people are rich and poor either because of luck, because of oppression, sort of Marxists might say, hey, the rich are rich, because they not because they have a different mindset, but because they have power, they have certain opportunities, education. Right. And then other people would say, well, it's just some people are talented and some people aren't, and combined with a bit of luck, that's how it all balances out. So, what would you say to anyone that sort of pushes back against the sort of psychological side of this?
I wouldn't for a nanosecond decry that some people have it a lot easier than others to start with, or anything like that. But what you do see in the mindsets and is when somebody is in a space where they understand on an embodied level that they are responsible for their own financial success, and somebody else, not for any other reason than this is how they've grown up and this is what they've absorbed around them, truly believes that somebody else or something else is responsible for their financial success, the outcomes are hugely different. Right. And there's a difference between responsibility and blame, because it is no one's fault if they're in a terrible financial position. But when you find yourself in any kind of a financial position, or any position really, when you understand it's your responsibility to do something about it, the outcome is completely different.
Yeah, and this is what I say to my students who's around embodiment and around trauma. I say, listen, you're not to blame that you're in a bad mood, but you are responsible. If you want to take responsibility, you can change your mood. You're not to blame for your trauma. And if you want to take responsibility for it, there are things you can do about it. And that is quite a big shift. And without that shift, people are in the victim mode, where it's very difficult to get ahead on anything, whether it be money or embodiment or anything else, because like they're being done to by the world.
That's
so
right.
So while we're not victim blaming, there is this frame of responsibility here, right, of saying, okay, I'm going to unearth some of my patterns around money, which are deep embodied cultural patterns, like some of the things we've talked about this a little bit before. Like, I come from an Irish family, there's certain things there, and Joe's from a Sikh family, and there's a different, you know, set of things there.
Yes.
So what do you think are some of the most common patterns that you see then?
The interesting patterns that we see is that when we went out to look at the money mindsets, there are the 4 money mindsets. So there's a mindset to be in debt for sure. But when we researched it, there's a mindset to break even. And it does what it says on the tin. Somebody with that money mindset will break even. A comfortable money mindset or saving money mindset is a very specific mindset where people save money and then they spend. And a rich money mindset is hugely different again. And what is an interesting thing is some cultures do seem to have, and I don't want to say something broad brush or, you know what I mean, too much or anything like that, but certain cultures really do understand that they are responsible for their financial success. So when I see my mother-in-law coming from Northern India, not only, like Joe says, she didn't have, you know, money or anything. She didn't even speak the language. But she had, and her husband had this huge concept of no one is coming in to rescue me. So I've got to be responsible for making this successful. Do you know what I mean? So you see in some immigrant cultures.
Cultural patterns. Yeah, you see that I've seen a difference in different kinds of immigrant, like Irish immigrant family I'm from. Yeah. You know, American Irish immigrants, it can be different from people that stayed, you know, back in the old country, as it were. It's definitely cultural differences I've seen in Russia and Israel and places I've worked quite extensively. And some places it seems like there is more of a push towards it, a self-responsibility towards it. Some places more of a scarcity mindset. In Russia, there's often this feeling like there's not enough money. That's, you know, right. And even when people are quite rich, they can have that as a mindset that seems to be completely independent from how much money they actually have in the bank. So we're not talking about poor people saying there's not enough money, because it's like, okay, you can say, well, that person's just poor, they're realistic. But when it's someone who's rich and has that mindset, I go, well, something's up here. You know, you're a millionaire and you won't buy your friend a coffee. Yeah, come on, you know, like, what's going on? Something's up there. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. And you even see the thing, I remember, and again, I don't want to get sued for political incorrectness or anything, but you know, if you went to Holland, like for argument's sake, and you see the difference between people from the north and the south of Holland, and that's a very Protestant Catholic thing, where you'd go to the Catholic south and they'd give you the coat off their back. And like, I remember, like, and you know, we'll say it's not quite like that. That, you know, that they're careful.
Listen, all I'll say is the last 2 times I've used Dutch suppliers, it's come in at both times it came in more expensive than was agreed originally. That's all I'm saying. You're out there.
So, you know, and then I know one Dutch lady, oh my God, and she's the most generous, fabulous person. Do you know?
Sure, there are patterns, and we shouldn't generalize totally, but it would be unrealistic to say there aren't patterns amongst certain groups. Or as a Chinese comedian I was listening to the other day saying that in China, instead of saying Happy New Year, the phrase in Chinese, in Mandarin Cantonese is, I hope you get rich. And that's their go-to phrase for Happy New Year. So, I mean, that says something, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, and they have Chinese people have the most fabulous, comfortable and rich money mindsets. And when we did our research for these mindsets, we spoke to lots of Chinese people, Indian people, you know, those people who've actually from nothing.
Okay, so go through those mindsets again. How would people listening to this spot it? You know, if they had a poverty mind, what were they again? Say them one at a time.
Right, yeah. Now we've got the 4 money mindsets. So we've got an in-debt money mindset, and it's all seen you can see it top line in the financial behaviors. So think of it this way: when your money comes in, I don't know how often it comes in, once a month, once a week, whatever. We're just going to say once a month. When your money comes in, does it straight away go to service consumer debt. If some of it goes straight away to service consumer debt, that's an in-debt money mindset.
What does that mean? Service
Consumer debt means if you've got credit cards.
Okay. I've got to pay back my overdraft.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I was always in my overdraft. When money came in, the first £2,000 was always just eaten by the overdraft because I was always at the end of my overdraft.
Yeah.
So it's already spent before it. As soon as it lands, so you've already counted for it. Yeah.
I'm just getting back to zero.
Yeah.
At this point.
Spot on. And when I was a debt advisor, you'd see a lot of that. Now, it's interesting, a break-even money mindset, exactly what it says on the tin. The money comes in and it's allocated.
Okay,
and
right.
If they can save a little bit towards the end, they will, but it always goes on something over a year or so, how you'd see the pattern there, Mark, is the money comes in, allocated, it's all spent, and then a tiny bit at the end.
Yeah, there's not much joy in that, really. So it's just
and people feel like they never get ahead.
Okay, I've been there too, actually. So, so that feeling of like I'm making ends meet. I'm not really going anywhere. I'm not really saving anything. I'm not really investing anything.
Yeah.
But surely to some of this is just external reality as well, right? I mean, for someone in a certain wage, for a certain job, I'm an entrepreneur. It's a bit different for me, but someone who's a nurse who lives in Brighton, that's a set salary for the NHS.
Yeah.
And there's a set sort of standard rent of, say, a 2-bedroom apartment in Brighton. I mean, isn't there just a reality there as well as a mindset?
The thing is, there isn't. And I'm not saying that the reality isn't X amount of money that comes in for you, but if, for argument's sake, you have a nurse in Brighton who has a comfortable money mindset, not the break even, right? They've got a comfortable. Sure as anything, they'll be having the 1-bedroomed, and it'll be a bit of a grotty one, and they will save. And the pattern you'll see for a comfortable money mindset is as soon as the money hits the account, they save a portion and then they spend the rest. And
so they're putting aside something. Okay, so I not that long ago got to this point. So I noticed when I was actually, I said this to you guys before, I don't mind sharing it out there because people often say, Mark, you're amazing with business and money. I'm like, I weren't always. I mean, for the first 5 years of my business, first 3 years of the business were tough. But after 3 years, we started doing quite well. I started making money. And I remember after 5 or 6 years, I went to my, business advisor. And she said, why don't you put some money aside for that and that? I said, I'm always in my overdraft. And she said, well, why? You earn pretty good money. And I was on about 40,000 a year or something, but I was always going back to my overdraft. And then eventually I got to a place where I was able to sort of at least break even. When I got married, I decided, right, no more debt. It's like overnight I shifted out of debt mindset. So I'm not going to get in debt because I'm getting married. And I really made a firm choice that I wouldn't make my wife inherit my debt. That didn't seem fair. So I got to more of like a break-even point. My wife claims she's lucky with money. I think she's grown up in a family where she has a very different mindset. She's got relatively wealthy. And over just the last couple of years, I've started putting money aside. So money will come in and I'll go, right, we had 50K come in from a big sale a while back. And I went, right, 10K I'm going to put into Bitcoin and an account. And I'm going to look into some shares and okay, let's put that aside. And then I spend the money. So is that like I've shifted?
That's a comfortable money mindset.
Okay.
And they will save first before they spend anything. And it doesn't matter. That's what makes an immigrant buy a sewing machine, even when they're living on absolutely sod all. They know if I can get the money together to do that, I can make more.
Right. And I'm going to save money. That's an investment.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm going to keep renting, I'm going to put money aside and in 10 years, I'm going to be able to buy a little house.
Yeah. And that's what I did. I came to London in 1989 and within 4 years, I owned my own flat outright. And I came with 17 quid. For the first while, I was sleeping on floors. But I had some drive and I did understand if I don't sort myself out to have a bit of collateral, I'm going nowhere. Funnily enough, once I had the first 1-bedroom flat, I was able to borrow to buy a big place to convert into a block, and I was able to do different things. Now that's a rich money mindset where every penny that comes in, Joe and I are a bit like this at the moment where as soon as money comes into us, we decide, okay, how do we leverage this money? This money needs to make more money now. Yeah.
So the mindset moves from, okay, I've got £1,000, say. So the comfortable is like, I can save that.
That's right.
But the rich mindset is, okay, what is the asset here? So, for example, one of the things I looked at was like, okay, I could put it into an account, but then the interest is lower than inflation, so that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Or I can invest it in this part of my business, and that's likely to have a better return.
Spot on. And particularly if in your business, you focus on growing assets. Because this is another thing we see about people with the poorer money mindsets. They're not brought up to understand that you're nowhere without assets. They are the only game in town.
Right. I was speaking to someone who had just inherited a house, and they had a house of their own, and they were going to sell it. And I said, listen, don't sell it, rent it. Do you want the cow or do you want the milk?
Yeah.
And they said, the milk.
Yeah.
And I went, no, wrong answer. And this person was not unsuccessful or poor, but they still had the mindset of thinking, get the thing now, not the asset, not the thing that's going to keep making money. Like, we might even have to go back to basics. Like, what's an asset for people?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And for people, we grow up not understanding what assets are. Like, often people will think their own home is an asset, but their own home is usually a liability, because an asset is something that systematically puts money in your pocket.
Right.
Yeah. And you can build assets from yourself from the ground up, or you can buy assets, but they are something that systematically pays you, and income follows assets. It is the only game in town.
Let me try and clarify that. I want to make it relevant, because most people listening to this don't have, portfolios of shares or houses. So my YouTube channel, which has ad revenue, that's an asset, because every month I get a certain amount from YouTube that comes.
That's right.
Whereas, what about my email list? Now, that is not making money directly, but it has the potential to make a lot of money. Like,
that is a good asset. And think of it as well. In there, it's probably an asset that probably keeps on giving in some ways, because I bet you embedded in there is all sorts of information. Do you know what I mean? If it's a big enough list that you could segment and all kinds of things, you could really leverage.
Part of the system that you can actually make money from.
Yeah.
And that becomes an asset, a bit like a YouTube channel, that something comes up every month, in effect, is actually, whether you're showing up or not, it's going to come in, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the YouTube channel is just, I could be sitting on a beach in Thailand and that would still come in. The email list I'd have to send an offer out to.
Yeah,
but yes. So, okay, so Joe, let's bring you in a little bit here as well, okay? I'm good interrupting there, by the way, as well. I'm from an Irish family. You have to learn to interrupt if you're going to get in there. So I've seen this dynamic before. So listeners are going to be shocked. They're like, no, matriarchal Irish culture. So how do people change their mindset? So I've sort of struggled. I've identified some of this, like, listeners may sort of be putting themselves somewhere on there. I feel like I go backwards and forwards. Some days I'm investing, other days I'm just trying to survive. Like, what do we do about the money mindsets if we identify?
And this is what we've been working on for years, hence actually identifying the mindsets. The first thing is to know which mindset you're actually in, because these play out habitually and subconsciously. You make decisions every single day on money, on what's a good financial decision, So what we need to do is identify what it is, and how we do that is we help people they come to us often with, what would you say, the top 3 problems to change it?
And that's, if you wanted to change your money mindset, they come to us. It's really helping people even identify what the problem is. The top 3 problems people come to us with is they say, I haven't got enough money. And we're saying to them, okay, so you haven't got enough money. What have you tried? And they'll often say things like, because our clients are all small business people, and we deem very mainstream small business people. And they say that they chase sales, or they're maybe borrowing or trying to get other money in like that. They also say one of their problems is a constant cycle of worry, or even this kind of Groundhog Day, that they're always in the same place financially. And that's the mindset at work. What's interesting about how we actually help them shift it is that initially, when we were helping people, we would help them with all the technical knowledge and understanding. So we would say, okay, you need these amount of accounts. You need to put this much in here every month. This is what you need to understand about assets. You know, all the technical knowledge and understanding. And within 2 months or 3 months, they'd fall off the wagon and it would go back.
Technical side's not enough, is it? It's same with marketing. Yeah. People can learn great marketing skills, but embodiment-wise, if they're not able to embody generosity and being seen and being playful and all this listening and all the things that are needed for marketing, they still can't do it. It's just they've got a load of books telling them what they can't do, you know, so that don't help.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And the more we went into this, we started to get into the world of embodiment. And I've trained as a trauma therapist. I'm in my final year of advanced trauma therapy training. And Joe does a lot of embodiment work as well. And I've not done it to practice as a therapist, even though I do have some therapy clients. But we did it because we started to see the mindset is so deep. In a way, I think the phrase mindset is bandied about, and it's probably not even that helpful.
It's not just a mindset, it's the body, it's the whole setup, right? It's the whole way of it.
It's just so deep,
So what we've had to do is get underneath the superficial symptoms and think, what's the actual deeper problem? And it boils down to, it's this thing, it's because it's money and you're human. And the way we make good financial decisions or don't, because we work with so many people, you have to actually have your thinking brain online. Also be aware of the actual, the emotional motivation, that what's causing the decisions, because it's the mindset that's in play as well. And then we have to get to and say what's actually happening to the body brain, the triune brain model. We often start with that and saying, look, let's look at how you make good financial decisions, just to sort of open up the mindset for someone.
Because when people are in fear and reactivity, that traumatized fight, flight, they can't plan long term. You know, I spoke to a financial advisor the other day. I said, listen, we've got this conference coming up. I don't know how it's going to go, but it might go well. I want to get a bit ahead of the curve on this. So I said, you know, he said, listen, Mark, I plan for 5 years minimum, you know, for your future for 5 years. Do you want to have that conversation? And I was kind of surprised. You know, most businesses don't think more than a year ahead. You know, you're like coaches, you might have a contract for 6 months maybe. And this guy was like, listen, I want to work with you for 5 years, you know, as a financial advisor for you. And I was like, wow. And if you're like if you're in that sort of traumatic, immediate threat, you ain't thinking 5 years ahead. You ain't thinking rationally. It's all coming from, I've got to get what I get now, you know, give me the milk, not the cow.
It is, and it can, but it causes people to make them, like, it causes really bright people to make awful decisions.
Yeah.
Because it's not even just the short-termism or anything, but repeatedly spending, repeatedly money comes in, and they have, for some reason, for something that hasn't yet come into their awareness, they keep on getting rid of it.
Right, that's what I did for years. I just kept getting rid of it.
Yeah,
I kept getting rid of it for years.
Yeah. Or as soon as they get scared, the comfortable money mindset is probably one of the most uncomfortable places a human being can be, from what we've felt and worked with the people who work with us, because it's fear-based, and it's like people close down and hang on, and they go to that anxiety place and start to hoard, and they starve their businesses.
I've definitely seen that with people that just cannot be comfortable. It just seems like, I think I turned a corner when I got married, and my wife says it's all her fault. I think she's been a good influence on me, but you know, I just haven't worried about money in a few years. Now I still think about my business a lot. I still think about, you know, make sure we make money, and okay, is there cash flow for the, you know, at the moment we're doing a crowdfunding for the conference, for example, and I've got to raise about £200,000 to make the conference happen. There's a bit of anxiety there, but I'm not like worried about it. It's just part of my plan for the year. We make the money, we borrow the money, we get gifted the money, whatever. I haven't worried about money in a few years. And even though now it's much bigger amounts of money flying out, I mean, you know, my mum couldn't bail me out if I screwed that one up. That's definitely the case. So I go, that's interesting that I'm not so worried about money now, even though the stakes are bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic, Mark. And some of the work, when we have these 7 capabilities that we look at with people, and one of them, it's just interesting talking to you. We explore how much people give their power to money. And what it's sounding like from you is you've actually gotten to the place where you're comfortable enough with it. You're not giving your power to money. You're having a bit more control over it.
And don't sleep over. I haven't lost night sleep over money in at least 3 years.
That's absolutely fantastic. And the other one is the upskilling. The real top 2% of financially successful people understand that as they get more money into the system, they're actually going to have to become better, not worse.
That's what I'm learning.
That's
I learn about houses and gold prices and Bitcoin and stocks, and I'm having to learn all these things. There's a lot to learn, but I don't mind. I just feel like it comes with the territory. It's a nice problem to have. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got to learn
it keeps on going, because if any of us here were given a £40 million business tomorrow morning, what would happen to it? We'd run it up on the rocks. We haven't upskilled enough. Like, it takes a lot different money skills to run a £1 million business or a £10 million business.
It does. I'm running the conference now, and that's a bigger scale than, my business before, which was like an 80 grand business. And the conference, it's got a 400 grand, 500 grand budget. So it's sort of 5 times as big as the business I was running before. And it's like, okay, new skills, new people, new colleagues, bringing new people in. Different spending as well. Like, I realized, like, I can spend money on, say, a copywriter for my website, or get a new fancier web designer, because the return makes sense. Whereas previously it wouldn't have made sense with the scale to have a copywriter. And the other thing I've realized, tell me if this is where this fits on your spectrum, is how precious my time is. This is, for me, I've realized that I don't want to be spending. I've had poorer friends of mine that I think have a poorer mindset, who will say, don't spend money on that, do it yourself.
Oh, God.
I'm like, why would I do it myself when I could? A, I don't want to, it's not my life purpose. But B, if my time is several £100s an hour, whatever it is, that's crazy to not spend 50 quid an hour to have that done for me.
You want to be on track.
Because you want to be focused on creating assets, and the upfront work is massive, but the reward is fantastic, because it ends up buying you your time. Because that will come in all the time, not earned income, which the majority of the population is set up to get a job, and then when they're not working, they're working for themselves, in effect, being self-employed, but they carry on with the same mindset.
Because when you're, I spoke to my lawyer about this, so I've got a lawyer now, right? Nice bloke, does jiu-jitsu, good guy. He gets paid £300 an hour plus VAT, and I thought that's quite a lot of money. And I thought that this is the most I'm used to paying someone per hour. I was a bit freaked out when we started paying him, but then it's very useful what he does now, because we're at a scale where it makes sense. But then I realized this guy has to work really hard, and he's got a limited earning potential, because he makes money per hour. Whereas I thought, if I'm selling assets, I'm selling a course that can have 100 people on, but it can have 1,000 people on. Or I'm writing a book, and that book, I've got a book now. My book makes me £10 a day. This book here, tenner every day into my bank account. Doesn't sound like much, but over a year, worth having.
As they say, that's better than a kick up the arse, isn't it?
It is, but because I'm not doing it, the book's written. Amazon's selling it. That's like,
but that's
pushback. I think I'm sort of sold for you guys in this sort of stuff, and I'm really realizing it's important. But what kind of pushback do you get here? Because people say, you part of the evil capitalist system, you're supporting oppression, you're just helping rich people get richer. Like, what's the kind of pushback you generally might get from the more, because my audience are pretty hippie, they're pretty alternative. What's the pushback you might get?
I mean, you can sometimes, when you're like, we present to big audiences, and you'll always look out into the audience and see a couple of people who were there, and they've a face on them like a slapped arse. And you can tell, and I think, right,
I love having Irish people on the show.
And you think, right, there's somebody there, and they're not in a good space with somebody creating money. And I suppose when it comes to the sort of the partisan politics or anything like that of money creation, I've seen a lot of that, because my dad and his background, I mean, he went to the best public school, all the rest of it, all that family were like that. And they did have beliefs about poor people that there's no point divvying out the money because these people would, what did Boris Johnson say, spaff it up the wall. And I hated their
and I guess you saw the corruption as well. I used
oh
to
man, I don't, if I even, just with political parties, I mean, honest to God, don't even start me on it. It was shocking. And it absolutely, it was one of the reasons I left Ireland, because I thought, I just don't want to be any part of this. But I'll tell you, on the other side of it, my granny on the other side, the poor one, was a communist. And she believed that every penny earned was from the sweat of the back of the working poor.
Yeah.
She was the nicest, most intelligent woman. And because her whole life she believed that her financial success was dictated by somebody else, she wasted her life and she achieved nothing more.
You want to screw it on over, because people think it's a zero-sum game, don't they?
That's
they think,
right.
if I make money, I take it from someone else. But that's not how money works, is it, when you look into
No, it grows and it creates, and I'm so passionate about it. I mean, and the hard right and the hard left, I did a degree in history out of passion for politics, really, because I'm so passionate about this. These things are just mental constructs.
Yeah.
They're nothing, except they create polarization. We see the sort of problems people have, and they try to interpret them through one of these lenses.
Yeah.
And you think, need to solve the actual problems.
Those extremes aren't very healthy, are they? And I guess I look at it another way. It's one, if I want to help my students who are poor, and I have poor mentees from working class backgrounds, it helps them if I teach them this money mindset stuff.
Completely.
Really, like, I want to get them out of poverty. It's part of that. It's not the only thing, but it's part of that. You know, they need good education, maybe government investment, you know, small business loans, you know, that kind of thing. But then the other thing I go is, well, what do I want to take responsibility for? I don't know if there is a better alternative to the capitalist system. There might well be. I hope there is. Maybe there is. There's problems there. There's definitely. But also, it's like, is that my responsibility to take that on my shoulders? Or is it just my responsibility to do the best I can with embodiment, which is my skill and my love? And if I want to help more people, I mean, today we gave out free embodied trauma training to several thousand people who are working with like anti-racism and anti-discrimination. I can only do that from a place of having a bit of wealth. Because it cost me a few £1,000s to put that event on. If I really want to help people, there's no way I can do that without having at least some money behind it.
That's the best demonstration of you taking your power back and control and doing something of good. Because what we do is that we've had, in one of the businesses, we rent properties. We've got flats in the poorest area of Derby. So we've got tenants there who are on benefits. And what we decided to do over a decade ago is we provided them with free central heating. Because they have problems managing their money, but we see that as like something of a giving of what we value, because there's a need there. So you can do more, you can be more of yourself and do more good out there by being good with money rather than looking at the system.
That's right. Yeah. And these guys, most of them, they'd actually just drink instead of, you know, but spending it on heating. And we can tell we've prolonged their lives through being able to give free heating. And that's something we're able to do. If we weren't generating,
being able to give, aren't you? Your position of being able to give. I think it's very easy. There's, you know, the whole, we haven't really got time now, but we could look at the other side of things of resentment, the amount of resentment I've drawn since I started doing a bit better. You know, even though from an Irish immigrant family, grew up poor, alcoholic dad, fucking hell. People get resentful real quick when you do well. That's what I found. And you know, and I don't want to be like a rapper calling everyone a hater who disagrees with them, but there's something in there just going, you know what, I'm not gonna, you know, Nietzsche identified this, the resentment that kind of comes in against the rich, and or even people who are just moderately successful in embodiment, not millionaires or anything. What other skill sets were there then? I mean, you got through a few, but what were some of the other skill sets that people need to learn who are maybe listening to this?
Well, I think we've identified 5 critical money skills.
And this is again some of the stuff from the training and capability and competency background. There are 5 critical skills, and one of the first ones is managing money. The second one is saving, and there are specific skills to saving money.
Okay.
The next one is creating, and then of course there is a skill to giving, and there is a skill to spending.
Yeah. And then embodiments as well, right? Like being able to give, you know, like if you look at the stereotype of like Gollum, my friend. It's the opposite of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And not rescuing. Do you know what I mean? Because you cross the line, and we've seen loads of people who financially enable people that they should never financially enable.
Yeah, well, I've seen that with, you know, people that have alcoholic husbands or wives or whatever, you know, addiction cycling, they're just keeping it going, you know, they're not actually helping. So enabling would be another one, wouldn't it? So those skills, so there's giving, there's being able to ask for money, right? Like a lot of my students really struggle with being able to ask for like payment. What advice would you have? Because I know a lot of people out there, they do yoga, they love their yoga class, but then when it comes to asking for the money, they somehow they tighten up, they stop breathing. You know, what would you say there?
And I mean, you embody these things about not deserving and all of these things, but some of it is also, you know, when people are in the space where they stay self-employed and they're not understanding how to build assets in the business. So they're not really understanding, how do you pitch your value?
Right.
And there's a lot of things surrounding that when we work with people and say, look, you need to understand what value you're giving. It's not about, you know, whether it's 5, 10, 200 or whatever you're asking for.
Yeah. And that's a key one, I think, with marketing generally, is often my students will be trying to sell themselves, and they'll say, I'll come to my yoga because it's Iyengar yoga. And I'm like, yeah, but what are you giving? Like, what's the actual value your class provides? And there's a sort of empathic reframe that's needed from the customer's point of view. And that's really an empathic move, is seeing what's at the heart of what they offer and the actual value of it, rather than, well, I do a yoga class. So it's like, well, so what, you know? It's
so true, Mark. And being able to then package it in a way that people out there, and not just, I suppose, specialist yoga people, but maybe some of the more general population can understand the value as well.
Right, because we tend to speak in our own languages and our own jargons, and we're all a bit too close to our own businesses. I find it very helpful to work with advisors, and I'll go to Julia Chantraise, one of my advisors in Brighton, or Tad Hargrave, and I'll say, well, what do you think the Embodiment Conference is? And what am I really selling is one of the things I ask quite a lot. It sounds like a dumb question, but I'm trying to figure out the real, like, what is the heart of this, the essence of it, the value of this for other people. And sometimes we're a little bit close to our own businesses. We're like, well, I just do aikido, I just do yoga. I don't necessarily see that from the customer's point of view.
That's very powerful. And the really powerful question there, Mark, is what is your customer actually buying? Yeah.
So they'll say it's a yoga class, but it's like, well, what do they get from the yoga class?
That's right.
Well, they're more relaxed. Okay, well, why is that good that they're more relaxed? Because they don't shout at their kids. Okay, why is that good? Okay, because they have a relationship with their kids, right? So you have to keep digging, don't you, a little bit?
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. Oh, we're almost on time here. This has been amazing. You guys are absolutely crapping value on everyone. Top takeaways for people then, having heard this. We'll give you one each. Top takeaways for anyone listening.
Well, we said the first one's always uncover your underlying mindset. You can see it from the numbers. Numbers never lie. They'll show you patterns, and that's an art in itself, because we have to help people with that. It's not as easy as you think. Karen, dear?
And I would say you can only take the next step, and the next step is fine as long as you're taking the right next step.
So that might be someone that's in a debt mindset, just getting that sort of break mindset.
Yeah.
Is it common? Like, I think I jump about a little bit. Is that common, or do you think it's more that we just have one that's there all the time?
We do tend to have a default one that is there, sort of 60-70%. It's the most prevalent, and we shift that when stuff comes into our awareness.
Got it.
Yeah. And once it comes up into the awareness, and that comes from that embodied space.
Yeah.
Shift it. Yeah.
Okay, if people want to find out more, where do they go? I definitely want to find out more. Is there a book? Is there a website? What's the thing people do?
Our book, The 4 Money Mindsets, is a very good start.
It's an audio book as well. I love audio books. You've done the audio book yet?
We've not done the audio yet. That's the next thing on the list,
Mine too. I haven't done my audio one either. This year, I spoke to someone this morning That's on my plan for this year. Okay, so there's the book. Any website? What's the URL?
And it's the www.theformoneymindsets.com.
There we go. You got the URL.
And great if somebody wants to connect with us on Facebook. It's an unusual surname, Sutton-Johal, SUTTON-Johal. And our business page there is the Penny Drops.
The Penny Drops is what people should be looking for. I'm just getting some stuff up on my phone here now. By the way, listeners, if listeners ever see me tapping my phone, I'm taking notes, okay? Those of you who are on YouTube, and I want you to think I'm texting my mum, which I do need to do today, actually. Okay, final parting message at all from either of you? Final parting message.
And this is the thing with actually sorting out your money and creating assets. It's all teachable. It's absolutely doable. We've done it for people. Done it for ourselves.
You can learn it, can't you? You can learn it. I think I modeled it the hard way from sort of wealthier friends and saw some of my own patterns, and I, stumbled along the way. But I think I could have learned a lot quicker had I had help from people like you. And I still got a way to go. I think there's always a next step. So good stuff. I think you've probably pissed off some people. So unlucky guys, if you want to send me your complaints on £50 notes, that's fine. Just post notes to me. And for everybody else, I think you've helped them. So thank you so much, both of you.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
It's great. Thank you for inviting us.